Okay, reading from the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, Book 1, Chapter 3, Text 1 to 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Śrī Parīkṣit uvāca. Bhagavantaṁ haraṁ tatra bhāvāviṣṭatayā hareḥ nityantaṁ kīrtayantaṁ cha kṛta-saṅkarṣaṇācanam bhṛśaṁ nandīśvarādīṁś cha ślāghamānaṁ nijānugān prītyā sa-jaya-śabdāni gīta-vādyāni tanvataḥ. Śrī Parīkṣit said, I gotta hold this. Arriving in Shiva Loka from a distance, the sage Narada saw Lord Shiva, Śrī Hara, who had just finished the worship of Lord Saṅkarṣaṇa. Śrī Hari, of Lord Saṅkarṣaṇa, Śrī Hari, entranced in ecstatic love, Lord Shiva was dancing and loudly singing the glories of the Lord, while his associates played instrumental music and shouted Jai Jai. With great affection, he praised his assistants like Nandīśvara, as well as the goddess Uma, who was expertly clapping her hands. The sight of all this delighted Narada. Vibrating his veena and nodding his head to show respect, he called out several times, "You are the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy." And in a sweet voice, he recounted to Lord Shiva everything he just told him by their father, Lord Brahma. Commentary. Lord Shiva had just finished worshipping the deity, Lord Saṅkarṣaṇa. The rituals of his worship were similar to those Narada had witnessed on the earth in Prayag. But at the end of this worship, Lord Shiva displayed the symptoms of ecstasy described in this verse. Worship the Supreme Lord's deity attracts both neophytes and advanced souls. But Vaishnavas who are fully self-realized enjoy intimate relationships with their worshipable deity. For such Vaishnavas, the Lord's acceptance of even the simplest act of devotion brings profound devotional ecstasies. Thus Narada found Lord Shiva in a trance of Sankirtan, reciting prayers of Lord Saṅkarṣaṇa, similar to those recorded in the 5th canto of Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta. Quote, "O my Lord, you are the only worshipable person. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all opulences. Your secure lotus feet are the only source of protection for all your devotees, whom you satisfy by manifesting yourself in various forms. O my Lord, you deliver your devotees from the clutches of material existence. Non-devotees, however, remain entangled in material existence by your will. Kindly accept me as your eternal servant." Since Lord Shiva is an incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and Lord Shiva and the personality of Godhead are therefore non-different, Lord Shiva does not need to worship Lord Saṅkarṣaṇa to become purified from material illusion. Lord Shiva performs worship eternally with standard paraphernalia to educate the world about the transcendental taste of devotional service. Brahma is also considered an incarnation of Godhead, but Shiva and Brahma are not equal in status. Lord Shiva is non-different from Vishnu in a more literal sense. The post of Brahma is always occupied by a jiva, whereas no jiva can ever become Vishnu tattva. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Śrī Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So greetings from Dharma Ashram in Cali, Colombia. Kind of made a joke on Janmashtami. I was, the congregation was here, and I was telling them when I first came here, I thought one way to maintain the ashram was have a music business. And I said this with all seriousness. I can't say it with serious now. And the name of the music business was going to be Kali Kartal. I guess we're in I have a little audience here now. We're in a real jolly mood. It's our last day here. And then tomorrow we head back to America. And then after 10 days, Govardhan. But it's a very nice stay. Yesterday, I have a nice teacher training. They're doing, still today, 2 days of the Yoga Sutras. And I actually introduced the Yoga Sutras here. I used to teach it initially. So I was asked to give an introduction. It's very interesting because it's the number 2 by Professor Edwin Bryan. It's the number 2 seller on Amazon.com, or at least it was for like Eastern spiritual books. And it's absolutely a brilliant thing. And he was a very kind soul. So he had joined the Hare Krishna movement in Vrindavan when I was there. So he always remembered me. And we had a friendship. And because, as you know, generally recently I've gotten a little bit different karma, but generally I never really had my own place. So I kind of would wander around. Even in Vrindavan, I never had my own place. It was always somebody else's place. And when I come back to Vrindavan, I would never know where my stuff is because I forgot which place it was. And Lisa kind of gave me the key to his house. And then one day I saw the manuscript that he was working on, which was the Yoga Sutras. And I started reading it, and it was fascinating, and it was extremely relevant to Krishna consciousness. Why? Because in the Vedas, there really was there's different darshans of philosophies. Vedanta is scriptural analysis. Shanka is philosophical analysis. Nyaya is logic. Visheshika is atomism. I don't forget what that is. And yoga was mental discipline, meditation, or really psychology. So what happened is different teachers at a particular time, for the sake of teaching it. And this is what happens when people become less and less qualified. People have to break the subjects into more and more things for people to digest it. So Patanjali took that aspect within the Vedas and the corpus of literature, and he broke it down into one subject, and then they write sutras. They codify the knowledge, and that's a really effective way of learning. You codify it. It allows for the memorization of a corpus of philosophy. You're very terse in words, and you learn it, and then you have the reference point, Atato Brahma Jigyasa from the Vedanta Sutra, and then Atato now. And then you remember all the commentaries on now, that now is not just a particular point, but it's hierarchical. Hierarchical means Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, that you've come to the human form of life, or now that you've studied all other, darshans. It has this hierarchical sense and has this sense of so therefore they expand. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. It's time to inquire, because human life, Prabhupada said, we have the ability to inquire. He said, what's the difference between a human being and an animal? Prabhupada said the human being can ask why I am suffering. Of course, I take that why I'm suffering. What did I do wrong? What should I be doing? Who am I? So it leads to self-realization, suffering. Because suffering indicates there's something wrong. Anyway, and so many things. And to inquire into Brahman, Tato Brahma Jigyasa, into something great, something beyond your limited context of reality. And that's what a Brahmin is. Brahmin means broad-minded. We're like children. We have bad stomachs, and we see the Sunday feast, and our reality is when it begins and when it ends, and the enjoyment that's there, and not everything beyond. So Brahmin means one who's broad-minded. He can see beyond the limited context. So, so when I saw it, I understood that, of course, that yoga is also part of Krishna consciousness, mental, but here in one place, it was so studied. And I actually, after that, I wrote an extensive article called Yoga Psychology, because I understood that the template of all psychology, any school of psychology, could be explained through the Vedic understanding of the mind, and what problems are, how they're solved, etc. So I wrote something on yoga psychology, and then I used to give seminars on that. And I remember there were like different professors of psychology that would come to the yoga class and sit into them. They would understand their own system of transformation through the yoga suit. So it's nice, and it's packed. And, it really was a lot of people there. So that was good. And of course, I think I see some people that have been here. You come here, you'll never eat a papaya again in your life. What to speak of a pineapple? I'm spoiled. I can only eat organic apples and organic blueberries in America. Can't eat any other fruit. Maybe a navel orange. So, anyway, we'll leave tomorrow. Now, of course, this book that we're reading, it's the genius. As we're reading it, we can see the realization of Sanatana Goswami, because what he's communicating, is the topmost stage. So he's giving the other stages, so that you understand the fundamentals. It's like a ladder. You got to understand one stage to get to the other stage. So you got to understand, like the Bhagavatam. Atra sargas visargas jastatir poshanam utaya. Atra sargas visargas cha. It begins with creation and post-creation. So if you don't understand the greatness of God and your own insignificance, you'll misunderstand the Ras Lila. And we initially understand our God's greatness and our insignificance through opulence. So we have to understand the creation to become. That's the first step in God realization, mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Seeing God in the world. And I had that realization when I went to the Himalayas, and when I was leading a bus party, and I just had to stop the bus and just look at the ranges of the Himalayas. How they, I got the kind of, what am I, a guy from Brooklyn thinking about the Himalayas? I'm looking up at these tall mountains, but I thought, wow, it's ranges, just vast ranges. And I felt like spiritual. I felt, wow, so insignificant. I needed to see power. I needed to see power before I saw love. So he's presenting this topmost thing in sages, in stages and sages. He's presenting it in stages to, and that's it, to philosophically and emotionally prepare one to assimilate truth. My latest Monday morning greetings, which you'll see tomorrow, is called Ignorance, Meaning, and Expansion of Consciousness. And the basic gist of it is how important knowledge is for perception. I gave a simple example. And actually, whenever I write a really like philosophical article, I started already for next week. It's about Titus, some guy that lives off the grid. Kind of made me feel humble. A guy who never went camping and hates country walks, and then see someone, just live in it just was so beautiful and impressive. And I just, so I do write simple things too, but this one was more philosophical. So whenever a philosophical article that it's creative. It's because it's not that I put things together and express them myself. So just to see that it's solid, I send it to Mahamuni, Professor Matthew Dasty, who's got his PhD in Nyaya. I always send it, and he said he liked it. It's solid, but so I began just by just saying it. I just asked the question: if you put a monkey in a room and you give him a computer, does he see the computer? Does he see the computer? So it's so obvious that there's higher levels and expansion of consciousness and deeper meaning that are accessed when we have a deeper understanding. So when you want to understand things deeper and deeper, you need some type of general education. It doesn't mean you have to be a scholar, but you have to understand you have to expand your consciousness by education. So we can see that how Sanatana Goswami is so absolutely brilliant, because he's doing this. He's also one thing I appreciate here about Sham Ashram And it's always been something that I've realized and I've tried to do, is that, and I think it may be a little bit, Hare Krishna movement could be stronger on that, is that a center needs someone who's there, who can speak and teach the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in an engaging manner. They have that here. I think that's so important, because that's how you advance in Krishna consciousness, by hearing. Of course, there's online classes now and there's so many things, but it's great to have that personal touch. So to see Sanatana Goswami in that meditation of his, that it born of deep compassion. Preaching, teaching should be born of deep compassion, because you should have an experience of something that you want to share with others. And I mentioned many times before, if you don't have that and you're in the world, you just may become envious of people who have more than you. But you have to have that spiritual standard, and then you really deeply have compassion, because you have this higher experience based on enlightening the consciousness by reading and applying the sacred texts. And so you really begin to appreciate Sanatana Goswami, how he's channeled or written or rewrote or whatever it is, but how he's presented this story that's so engaging. It's just like the Bhagavad Gita, that it's on a battlefield. Why is it on a battlefield? The important thing is the philosophy. But when there's a fight, then everyone loves to see it. I remember growing up, Coney Island, Manhattan Beach, and you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden you see half the beach running to the other side, and someone says, "Fight, fight!" and everybody, the whole beach is running to one side. So that's the Bhagavad Gita. It's fight, fight, and everybody's attentive to it. The Mahabharata. This is also Vyasadeva, so brilliant. You have this whole war, you have this whole intrigue, but within it, within the cover coating, is the medicine, the Bhagavad Gita, the philosophy. And so it really takes so much compassion, because faith and compassion is also connected to faith. What's the faith? The faith is in what you're experiencing. The faith is the suffering, your understanding of the suffering of people who don't have it. And you don't move an inch without faith. So by that compassion, you want to communicate it. And then Krishna empowers you to do it. What to speak of the work of the work of writing such a great text. So now we're up to this section, and it's kind of progressive. It's this beautiful story. It's a different story than the Bhagavatam, but it's based on the Bhagavatam, because it's the summary of the Bhagavatam by Maharaj Parikṣit to his mother. It's the summary of of a book akin to the Bhagavatam by Jaimini Rishi to Janamejaya. So it's akin, and because it's akin to the Bhagavatam, even though the shape is different, you have the same stages being discussed. It's the same as the Bhagavatam. The levels of devotion. I forgot what their names are, but there's Jnana Mishra Bhakti, and there's different levels of bhakti until you get up to the gopis. And so here, Narada Narada went to Lord Brahma and glorified him, and Lord Brahma, it just began to psychologically. You do my deeds, you have to wash it. Okay. Go get him a tissue. Is there a tissue here? Go wash your hands. No, let him wash his hands, and then come back, and then leave the tissues for him. What was I talking about? Lord Brahma. Yeah, so Lord Brahma just it's just, again, what is it presenting? It's presenting devotion. And one aspect of devotion is two things. One aspect of devotion, Chaito Darpanamarchanam, is the heart is pure. And when the heart is pure, you don't desire to be the center. You have no selfishness in you. So you don't gravitate towards that position of being the controller and enjoyer. And the whole world is moving that way because they're not pure. I wrote one Monday morning greetings called "You're Wrong," just to show people how much they're attached to that conception of false ego. Because what wrong means is I lose power. I'm wrong. Or we think we lose power. Because generally, you get ruled by truth. So if you're in an argument with someone, and then they're right, then you're under their conception, and they're better than you. And so, we think, oh, we don't have false ego, but then the next time someone tells you you're wrong, we fight to the death. So the whole world is moving in that direction, and the devotee is moving in the other direction. He's got this pure heart, and he has no desire for the center. And then when he's glorified, he kind of shuns it and turns his consciousness inward and honestly sees where he's lacking. And even if he's not lacking, he feels lacking, because that's the nature of prema. Prema is a hunger for Krishna. So the greater your hunger is, the more you think you have less of what you are hungry for. So you're hungry for devotion, you don't think you have devotion. So Brahma just reflects on himself and just, like, come on, Brahma vimohan lila, I just stole the cows, I made such a fool of myself. And not only that, all the people, I'm glorified for being like the head of the demigods. You know what my Indra did? And you know what this one did? And Varuna stole Nanda Maharaj. We entered the water, and this one, and we're all so screwed up, and you're glorified. And at least when I screwed up, I went to Vrindavan. So I think it was worth it because I got to go to Braja. But I didn't stay very long because I'm such an offensive guy. I just got to get out. I couldn't stay too long, just like 3 days or 3 years. I stayed for 3 days, offered my respects, my obeisances, and then I left. But you really want to see someone advance, then he goes to Lord Śiva. And Lord Śiva, and Brahma's mentioning it right here, Lord Śiva it's not Vishnu Tattva, it's Shiva Tattva, but it's equal to Krishna. And that verse is quoted the second offense. We say, to think demigods equal or independent, but actually the word is Lord Śiva. The main offense is to think Lord Śiva is different. Milk to yogurt. Yogurt is nothing but milk. The only difference is yogurt cannot become milk, but milk can become yogurt. But if you are a vegan, you don't take milk or yogurt because they're the same thing, right? Right? But so yeah, he glorifies Lord Shiva, and you know, he says we wear these beautiful ornaments. Lord Shiva wears garlands of weeds, intoxicating weeds, and skulls. He said, but he's so smart because the garlands wither. Those things also wither. He doesn't lose anything. And his level of ecstasy, and I couldn't give Hiranyakashipu liberation, but Lord Shiva could give me liberation. And not only he gives me liberation, but all people on his planet get liberation. And don't think that he's different. And not only that, and then he goes and he explains, what does he see? He sees, okay, there can be worship done, but real bhakti is the consciousness that is done behind it. The consciousness that is done behind it. And this is the consciousness, he's in ecstasy. And therefore, it makes an interesting point about deity worship. It's for the neophytes. It's for the neophytes. But it's not just for the neophytes. How is it for the neophytes? Because what is Tantra? Tantra transforms the material into spiritual. So how do you transform the material into spiritual? You use it for God. So the incense is fragrance. Fragrance is unique to the earth. Then you order water. That's taste. Taste is water doesn't have fragrance, but has taste. And then it has all the other experiences. And then fire doesn't have taste or fragrance, but it has vision. Earth, water, fire, air. Air doesn't have fragrance by itself. It doesn't have fragrance. You can't see it. Fire you can see, and you can't taste it, but you can feel it. And then ether. Ether, you can't see, you can't feel, but you can hear it. So it represents earth, water, fire, air, ether. There's the incense, then the fire, the water, the air, the peacock feather, and then the chamara is a little bit more subtle, or the sound. And so it means it's transforming material into spiritual. And because the neophyte is involved in an enjoying way with the material, to have him engage the senses and the material activities for God, it transforms and it purifies them. So it's recommended that way, to deal with the fragrances and the beautiful colors and the tastes and everything, but for God. But it says it's not just for the neophytes. It's also for people who are advanced in Krishna consciousness, who are advanced, and it's their relationship with Krishna. Ultimately, what the deity should be is the Lord in your heart that you see externally. And that's your deity. That's your deity. What's in your heart, now you've recognized externally, and you develop a relationship with the deity. And the rituals Lord Shiva is doing to for others in one sense, because he can have bhav seva. Bhav seva is when you just worship the deities basically almost with your tears and with all the other paraphernalia. But you know, the lamp just doesn't represent transforming, you know, there's like fire, it's your heart. It represents your heart. So this is like your relationship with Krishna and your yeah. So so Lord Shiva is just, Narada comes and he explains that, wow, look at this. Of course, the other thing that Lord Brahma told him is wait a second, don't go to Mount Kailash. Lord Shiva is expanded in Mount Kailash, but there it's only in relationship to he reciprocates with his devotee Kuvera and acts as his guard. But there's a Shiva Loka planet beyond the universe where Lord Shiva lives in so much opulence, and you'll see his full bhav and his full devotion. And it can only go by the devotees of Lord Shiva, but you have that bhav. You can enter. And this is such a interesting, there are places you can only enter by consciousness. You can only enter Krishna by consciousness, because we're separate. That verse, Daivi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Darateya Mameviye Prapadyante Mayam Eta. This divine energy of mine is impossible to overcome, but one who surrenders can overcome. Consciousness overcomes what covers us from Krishna. And because it's Krishna's energy that is covering us from him, we can't materially remove it. It's like being in a door and trying to get in, and it's locked from the other side. The owner has to let you in. So it's and talking about God, it's another realm. And therefore the Brahma Samhita says, Pantastu koti vatsasampara, Pantastu koti vatsasampara sampagayo vayoratapi manaso manipungavanam. You can, by the speed of the mind, for billions of years, you can't touch the lotus feet of Krishna. So we're separated by our faith, our conviction, our desire, our want. When we want Krishna, we have Krishna. It's simple as that. Because we don't want Krishna, we're here. Because we don't want Krishna, we don't want to serve Krishna, and we don't want to anukulyena Krishna anu shilanam. We don't want to have our shilanam, our mind, our body, and words follow Krishna. We don't want it to follow Krishna, because we don't love him. When you love someone, your mind, body, and words are just a slave to their needs, a slave to their desires, not in a codependent way, but out of love, like a mother. So love is such a humble position, so antithetical to the false ego of superiority. It's, I'm a servant. We relish that. We take that activity. So now we will somehow, it's a dim room, and so now let's read on what happens here. And again, the bhav of Lord Shiva, a real devotee how much they don't want profit, admiration, and distinction. How much they don't care for that. Puja, worship, pratishtha, distinction. They really don't. And therefore, they can be very honest and open-hearted. They're not bluffing. They're not manipulating, all these things to protect our ego. So Narada came closer, hoping to touch the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the best friend of the Vaishnavas. But as the sage came near Lord Shiva, a flood of Krishna-conscious pleasure driving him wild forcibly drew Narada closer and embraced him. Without hesitating, he asked Narada, respect, dear son of Brahma, what are you saying? Because he just repeated all his glories. And Lord Shiva is in this ecstasy. And he's on that emotional platform. He's guided by his feelings. And the feelings are pure. So it's good to guide yourself by your feelings when they're pure. And if they're not pure, better to be guided by your intelligence. There's even a stage of advanced devotion called, Jiva Goswami mentions it, Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Bhakti. Ajata, before born, Raganuga Bhakti. So what is Raganuga Bhakti before you're born? Before Ajata Ruchi, before Ruchi, real taste is born. What's spontaneous devotion? Well, you have that goal. You have that goal. And you cultivate that goal and you hear about that goal. But you keep yourself under the regulation of Shastra because your heart is not completely pure. And if you're not regulated by your intelligence, you'll do, you just won't be fixed. So he gave an example. Some of you don't have the mantras, but when you do the Gopal mantra, and there's a meditation on Krishna, Govinda, Gopijana Vallabha, he says, so you're regulated, you have to do these activities, but you think of Krishna in Vamsivat, under a tree, blowing his flute to attract Krishna. So, but Lord Shiva, there's no external formalities in his life. It's like Narada comes, a flood of Krishna conscious pleasure driving him wild. I have to go to the Sanskrit because the words give the bhav. Sri Krishna Rasa. Eka Priya. Lord Shiva is described as Eka Priya, one of the Priyas. Of those who love Krishna, he's number one. Eka Priya. In this world. Drawing close. Aslisha. Aslisha, what is that? Wait, wow. The last verse of the Shikshastakam. Aslishyava, Aslishyava, Padaratam, Adarshana, Aslisha. Embracing the sage. Akrishya, coming closer. Sammata, Mata goes mad. Some of a complete madness. Complete madness. And a Krishna rasa dharya, a flood of Krishna rasa, a flood of the transcendental taste. Sri Krishna rasa dharya, a flood of the transcendental taste of his rasa, his relationship with Krishna. It just poured forth from his consciousness when he saw the devotee of Krishna, Sri Narada, drawing him close, embracing him wildly. This is what Narada is seeing. He's looking for the topmost devotee of Krishna's mercy. Absorbed by the taste of talking with the superlative Vaishnav Narada, Lord Shiva then stopped his playful dancing and sat down. He sat on a straw mat in the virasana posture, and a few of his gentle companions seated themselves around him. With devotion, Narada bowed down to Lord Shiva, the life and soul of Parvati, and chanted the 6-syllable Rudra mantra. So absorbed in the because Narada just speaks about Krishna, and that's what bhakti is. A person's level of advancement is his attraction for speaking about Krishna and hearing about Krishna. That's one's level of attraction. So Lord Shiva wants to hear about Krishna. Narada is speaking about Krishna. And it's a flood of nectar. So he stopped what he was doing and he became some bhashana, bhasha like Govinda bhasha, it means a converse, a discussion. So he's conversing, rasa aplutan, he became absorbed in sambhashana rasa, this rasa of conversing with who? With Sri Vaishnava Shrestha, the Shrestha, the best, Nama Shreshtam, Manumapi, Sachi Putram, Atra Sarupam, Rupam, Nama Shreshtam. It means the best. But this is Sri Vaishnava Shreshtam. He was sambhashana, conversing, absorbed in the taste of conversing with the topmost Vaishnava. Then what happens? Sanyukta, he leaves aside nitya and dancing and everything. He stops. So you see what Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta is. Every person that you go to, there's so much ras and understanding. And Śrī Parīkṣit said, upon hearing this, the sage Narada was shocked, thinking, Narada then recited prayers glorifying Lord Shiva as the supreme controller of the universe and elaborately proclaimed the fullness of the mercy bestowed upon Lord Shiva by Krishna. Lord Rudra, the best of the Vaishnavas, the initiator of devotional service to Vishnu, at once covered his ears and angrily replied. Rudra said, I am not the Lord of the universe, nor am I the object of Krishna's mercy. I am just a poor soul, always hankering for the flavor of the servant of his servants. I'm just hankering for that. That's all. I'm not this. I'm not this. And why am I hankering for it? Because I don't have it. Don't say this again. Parīkṣit said, upon hearing this, the sage Narada was shocked. Thinking that he acted offensively, at once stopped praising Lord Shiva's non-difference from Krishna, began to speak in a soft voice. See, Narada said, you certainly know the confidential, mysterious glories of Lord Vishnu and the Vaishnavas, and you have expertly explained those glories. The best of Vaishnavas therefore aspire for your mercy. Lord Krishna also has great regard for you and extensively spreads your glories. Has Krishna not worshipped you many times in his various incarnations and taken from you many boons? Lord Shiva, Parīkṣit said, hearing this, Lord Shiva could no longer maintain his gravity. Ashamed, he sprang to his feet, covered Narada's mouth with both his hands, and said, don't ever mention that arrogance of mine. He then boldly told Narada with surprise in his voice, just see the incomprehensible power of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Oh, my Lord is so sober. He is such a deep and varied ocean of great qualities. Even though I've committed many kinds of offenses against him, he still does not reject me. I'm an offender. Śrī Parīkṣit said, seeing Lord Shiva completely absorbed in the transcendental taste of pure devotion for Krishna, Narada, pleased beyond limit, grasped Lord Shiva's feet, made him sit down again, and spoke to appease him. Narada, you are so dear to Lord Achyuta, is it possible you could ever offend him? Though people sometimes see what they think are your offenses, he never sees them at all. And then there's some more discussion. But our ecstasy has carried us to, we really, through these things, through these stories of Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, we really get like a flavor of what is a Vaishnava. Because it's so antithetical to how the false ego guides one. So antithetical. And reading these things, and I like to go back to the Sanskrit because sambhashana rasa, the rasa of conversing, unmata, drove him mad. And then aslishya, he had to stop, nitya, dancing. Very nice. Okay, we have a nice, somehow, we have a nice, let's see, we have a nice group today. Jamunajaya, did you have to go yet? You still here? I think she had to go teach her class on Sundays, yeah. Gail?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah.
Gail, I thought you fainted in ecstasy.
Please pray for me. One day I may do that while hearing about Krishna Katha. Yeah, one question.
You're just one of those humble Vaishnavas that won't admit your glories.
One day I hope to have that for real too. But anyway, just a couple of things. One is, when you were saying that the ghee lamp represents the heart of a Vaishnava. Yeah. I was thinking, how is the ghee lamp singled out for that when everything that the Vaishnava offers or does is a manifestation?
Well, maybe look, I've been in Vrindavan and I've heard many things from many sadhus, which I haven't read any place, and I've accepted until Gail asks a question. So I just repeat them out of faith. It made sense to me. It just looks like, it just seems like the heart. It's so beautiful, the flame. But yeah, I guess it could be anything in one sense. But that sadhu that I listened to, I guess he was just indicating, and I think the main point is it's not just transforming the material It's not just transforming the material into the spiritual, but it's an emotional thing too. It's not just tantra, Vaishnava tantra. It's not just this transformation, but it's yeah. Okay, Gail.
Just one more thing, Maharaj, is
But if you ask one more thing, I'm going to wish you'd become a Catholic.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm not converting. I'm not converting.
Okay, that's a joke. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wish it were a little more obvious to me how it is that when we don't like being wrong, the connection between that and the desire for power.
Because knowledge is power. We control. If we're right, let's you have an argument. If you're right with someone, then you have power.
Yeah, I mean, what's the power, dear? The power to do what?
Power is for control.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, when I think of power, I think, I can make you do something, whether you want to or not.
You can if you have if knowledge is power. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that knowledge is power. These are one of the opulences, and they enable you to control the world. If you're thought of as more learned, if then you have power. You can control. Any opulence allows you to control. You have money, you can control. You have beauty, you can control. You have knowledge, you control. And therefore, we're very, but I see this, yeah. That's what it is. And that if you're arguing with someone and then you say to your husband, yes, dear, you're right. Okay, now you understand it. Okay.
I gotta try that.
Okay. Yes. Okay, you finally understood it.
Maharaj, just to go real dry for just a half second, the difference between scriptural and philosophical analysis, when you were talking about the 6 darshans, what is that?
Scriptural philosophical analysis like jnana, the Shankya is analyzing all the elements. And scriptural analysis is hearing the scriptures with faith.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, Maharaj, thank you.
Yeah, you asked me anything I've heard of, but I haven't analyzed deeply. Okay. Anybody else? Jai Radhe?
I was just laughing because I had the same exact question about the fire in the heart, because last Vyasa Puja, you really touched my heart with the phrase that we don't have a fire yagya here, but let's our hearts to be a fire. And I was really moving.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Also,
where are you? Are you in your house?
Yes, I'm just in a different room.
Not such good reception in that room.
Sorry. You can't hear me well?
I can hear you, but you were broken up. I heard you.
I just wanted to tell you one thing. When you were telling about the monkey and the computer in the room, it really felt for me like that today when you started to speak and you really pulling me out of the whole conception of material life, of all my daily chores and so on. You're really pulling me on a totally different realm of reality, which is spiritual reality. I really felt this transition today.
Right, because you saw, of course, the duties and all that. If you just look at them as duties, but there's a deeper meaning, right?
Right. You just like broaden up for me my vision and open up for me like a whole different level today. With your
wow. Okay. I'll make a joke. It's a private joke. Well, maybe I brought you the level. The next time you serve me soup, you won't put sour cream in it. Okay. Okay. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Tota Gopinath here.
Oh, Tota.
Hare Krishna. See you in a week.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Bhakti Devi, Haribo.
Haribo. I kind of was a little bit blown away, and I don't know if I should have known this, but when in the verse it said that Brahma's post is occupied by a jiva.
And actually, if you look at the commentary, what it says is it's a jiva that has followed their duties in life perfectly for 100 births.
My mind, I'm like, boy, what did you have to do in life to get that post?
All of a sudden, Bhakti Devi became disappointed. Oh my God, I can't become Lord Brahma. I can only become the senior vice president of a bank. Okay, but here's the other thing. Then, after that, you're still not qualified for Shiva Loka until you become liberated. So Shiva Loka was that, and Lord Brahma was saying that Shiva Loka was even a higher thing.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's a great book, the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta. It's just like a novel, and the editing. I don't think there's ever been a scriptural book with this level of clarity. And I was there when it was being edited. Sometimes I would go in the room, and you'd have Gopi Pranadhana, Kesha Bharti Marj, and Jayadvaita Marj arguing over one word. And what?
So whose translation is it?
This is Gopi Pranadhana. He's my god brother. I actually, when I used to go to the Brooklyn Temple, it was so dynamic that every week I would sit down next to an amazing devotee for 2 years, because I was going there for amazing. So I sat down with him, and he was a person who had studied linguistics in Columbia University. And then he, became a devotee, and he worked with the Sanskrit department and became, such a Sanskrit scholar. He's a very humble person. He also lived in Govardhan in the same complex that I live in. And amazing guy. And then after, translating so many books and editing so many books, he started to preach. And he went to China. And he learned Chinese. He was learning Chinese. He's had that linguistic thing. And then he was preaching in China and and he came back for 2 days, and he passed away in Govardhan.
Mm.
He had asthma, and he just passed away. Yeah. And
can I ask you whose translation of the Yoga Sutras?
Professor Edwin Bryant. His name is Advaita. It's unparalleled. It's unparalleled. Yeah. He's a wonderful Vaishnav. Advaita. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? I'm on a Kadasi Bhav. Hey, Bo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Where are you, lady?
We're in Vancouver.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. At least you're at the same time. No. Oh, you have to wake up early for my class.
Yeah, it's very early morning. Yes.
That's good.
Now it's 6 o'clock. Yeah, but it was 5 o'clock. Now it's 6 o'clock in the morning, but it was 5 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. Haribo.
For the class. Thank you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Hemalata Radha. Thank you so much for class.
Oh, Haribo. Good. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Likewise, Maharaj. Have a safe trip tomorrow.
Be together in just another short while, maybe another month.
Yeah. Yes.
Every day around Govardhan half, you and Sham. And then you're done about Vikram with Jai Jagannath.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, Haribo. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. This is Chad. I think I just wanted to share. That analogy or the metaphor of a ghee lamp for like bhakti or service actually makes so much sense to me, especially because you shared with, part of what you shared was the intense longing. Yeah. And anyone who's been in the darkness knows when you're grabbing for a light, you're looking for something. And I think that is just so profound, and something that kind of comes up for me is, C.S. Lewis, he has this idea that in Surprised by Joy, that we find longing not just in the dark places, but in happy places. And he gives an example of when we're looking at a beautiful sunset, we're so overwhelmed by how beautiful it is, but there's this nagging feeling that, is this all there is? And that we're haunted by that longing. And so it's not even just in dark places, so to speak, but in happy places that we're still longing for something more. And then in the ghee lamp really, to me, symbolizes that.
Wow.
Really
Thanks for that, Chad. Okay, well, I see you next week.
Yeah, you will see me, Maharaj.
Okay, great. Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you for class.
My main man, Amala. Haribo. Good to see you. Okay. And I will receive that Maharaj at Jack's house a week from Tuesday. Right?
Nice. And
the Maharaj who has a motorcycle gang called Ahimsa. Yeah. They rug into town with their jackets, and everybody's terrified of them. And then they take out with Dungan cartels and do harinam and distribute prasadam. Yeah, so he's going to come on Tuesday to my house. Yeah, maybe you guys want to come. You can still stay at Greg's. You can come down for that program and then go to the airport today. But I would definitely. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, Amal, Haribo.
Haribo, thank you.
We're missing you in Kali.
Oh, I'm missing being in Kali.
Not enough tattoos this time. Okay. Anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Namaste is here.
Haribo.
Thank you for the class. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Haribo.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Garaj. It's all Govinda. Thank you for class.
Haribo, Lal.
Haribo. Looking forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj. This is Champak.
And Damodar Vinod.
Wow.
See you next week, Maharaj.
Hey, great. See you soon. Champak.
Yes.
Mallory here is in a state of separation from you. I'm seeing her go through all kinds of transformations. Okay. Okay, Haribo.
Me too. Same here. Hare Krishna.
Okay, we'll go now on a bunch of culprit